Well, hello there, and welcome to a new Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, whatever I want, whenever I want. And today's podcast is sort of the start of a new experiment I'm doing in short podcasts, where I'm only going to review one film in this podcast today. Instead of reviewing 3 films in one podcast like I have been doing over the past couple of weeks/months, I'm just going to be reviewing the one film in this podcast today. So hopefully it'll be quite a short podcast. I mean, saying that, I do ramble on a bit sometimes, but hopefully this podcast will be quite short today. And the one film that I'm reviewing in this podcast today is the relatively new Ben Affleck film, Air. But just before I get into that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but heck, you're just not in the right place and you don't have enough time to watch the full podcast on YouTube, then you can also check the podcast out audibly on Spotify and Nice the Movies on that platform. But if you are already listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast, if you enjoy the podcast, please feel free to like and subscribe, and also leave me some suggestions of things to improve on in the near term future with these podcasts. Maybe you prefer longer podcasts, or maybe you like the idea of having shorter podcasts. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section, in the feedback section, or whatever on this podcast. But anyway, let's get straight into it, shall we? And let's get into my review of the relatively new film, Air. So this film is directed by Ben Affleck, and it also stars Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Chris Tucker, Viola Davis, and Ben Affleck himself. And the IMDb plot synopsis of the film goes as following. The film follows the history of a shoe salesman, Sonny, played by Matt Damon in the film, and how he led Nike in its pursuit of the greatest athlete in the history of basketball, Michael Jordan. And this film came out over a month ago now. It's about a month ago. Yeah, it might have been over a month ago, actually. And when it initially came out, I really wanted to watch it because I'd heard a lot of people raving about this movie. A lot of people I follow online, I watch on YouTube, you know, film reviews which I admire, were raving about this film, saying it was the best film of the year so far. And well, we are in May now, and we have had quite a few movies out already. So when I was hearing this, I was going, ooh, this sounds really exciting. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to watch it in the cinema though. And I'd heard that it was a Prime Video production, so I realised, oh, you're probably going to have to wait a couple of weeks, maybe a month at the most, for it to come out on streaming. And that was the case, because last Friday, on May the 12th, it did come out on streaming, and I sat down to watch it, I think, on Saturday or Sunday of last week. And I've got to say, I was impressed by it. I can see why people were raving about it. Now, I don't think it's the best movie of the year so far, nor do I think it's one of the best movies of the year so far, and I don't think by any chance it's going to be one of my favourite films come the end of this year, but nonetheless, it's a fun, it's an entertaining film, and also it's insightful at times, it's inspiring, and you know what? Yeah, I really enjoyed myself when I was watching this movie. I thought it was great. And one of the reasons I liked it so much is because in a similar way to Tetris, which I viewed on a podcast a couple of weeks ago now, in a similar way to Tetris, it's a film about a story that I didn't really care much about, and I didn't really know about, and yet I found it insightful. I found it interesting still because of the way Ben Affleck directed the film, and also because of its storytelling. You know, I like films like this where I'm not really interested in the subject matter, but I'm liking the film nonetheless. Like, I've got to admit, I'm not a fan of basketball whatsoever. I just don't get it. One of the sports I just don't get. But I found this film interesting, and I really want to emphasise that, because even if you're someone like me and you're not a fan of basketball or Michael Jordan, you don't understand it's a big deal, I'm just not a fan of him, but if you're not, as well, like me, you will still probably get something out of this movie, at least I did, and I still found it really entertaining to watch, because I like one of the ideas that the film presents to us, and that is this whole idea of it's not about a shoe, it's about who wears a shoe and what they represent. Because in the end, you know, somebody may look at this film and say, oh, it's just about a shoe, and it's not really about anything else but the shoe and about Nike. And I understand that argument, but one of the points made in the movie is that it's not just about the shoe, it's about who wears it. And when that idea was presented to me when I was watching the movie, I started to get something else out of it, and I really liked that about it. Also, like I've already mentioned briefly, Ben Affleck's direction is great in this film. He just has this flair for directing conversations, you know, shot-reverse-shot sequences between two characters with just so much energy, and it's got so much sharp and tight direction, this film. Yeah, it's really well made. And also, he does a great job throwing you into the 80s as well. Like, there's this montage sequence at the start of the film which sets you up, okay, you're in the 80s now, and this is the tone, this is the setting, this is the feel we want for the film, and that's conveyed in this brilliant montage at the start of the movie, and also through the soundtrack throughout the film as well, the song choices, the needle drops, where you have plenty of great 80s tunes. And, you know, I've got to admit, I'm a big 80s music fan myself, and you have songs like Money for Nothing, Ain't Nobody, Sister Christian, Rock the Casbah, which is one of my favourite songs, Born in the USA, and a very interesting use of that song as well. Time After Time and All I Need Is a Miracle, some absolutely banging 80s tunes which you can't help but smile at, but also, you know, keep that 80s feel of the film, if you get what I mean. It keeps you in the mindset that this is a film set in the 80s, and I really like that about it. And also, there was some great performances from everybody. Honestly, if you look at the cast of the film, and you expect that. You have Matt Damon in this film, and he is great. A little more understated, in my opinion, but yeah, really good though. Probably one of my favourite Matt Damon performances, actually, is maybe between this and what's it? Talented Mr. Ripley. I almost forgot the name of it then. The Talented Mr. Ripley. His performance in that is pretty great in my opinion, and his performance in this is also great as well. Jason Bateman is great in this, but you know, the things about Jason Bateman, right? Whenever I see him on screen in a movie, on a TV show, whatever, I always just think of Arrested Development now, because Arrested Development's superb, and he's the main character in that show. I was about to say in that film, in that show. So, you know, sometimes when I watch Jason Bateman on screen, I find it somewhat difficult to differentiate between the Arrested Development and the character he's playing in the film I'm watching. But he's really good in this nonetheless, and does has some great scenes with Matt Damon. And also Chris Tucker is great in this movie, and Viola Davis is also brilliant, but you expect that from Viola Davis. You know, she was phenomenal in The Woman King last year, and also she's phenomenal in this film as well. And yeah, whenever she's on screen, you feel her presence. And yeah, it's a really entertaining watch. I'm half surprised to say that, because like I said before, I had virtually no interest in the story whatsoever, and I didn't really know about it. I mean, I knew the outcome of the story. Everyone knows the outcome of the story. You know, Air Jordans are shoes. They are shoes out there. I'm not really a shoe person myself. I'm not a basketball person myself. But I know that Air Jordans exist. So everybody knows the outcome of this story. But that's not the point of the film. It's, you know, similarly to 13 Lives, which came out last year, or Rush, the Ron Howard film, or Apollo 13, if you want to stick on Ron Howard films for a second. It's one of those films where you know the outcome of the story, but the storytelling and the way it's directed still makes it interesting, and you still feel, you know, somewhat engaged in the film. And yeah, I was surprised by how entertaining I found it, considering that I really didn't care about the story before watching it, or the fact that I already knew the outcome as well. That really didn't affect my liking. However, what did affect my liking was that this film very much feels like a Hollywood production. And what I mean by that is the script feels very Hollywoodized. I don't know if that's actually a word or not, but there's one monologue from Matt Damon's character, Sonny, towards the end of the film, and it's a good speech. I quite liked it, but it felt very American. It felt very Hollywood, and that sort of took me out of it. Like, I still enjoyed the film overall, don't get me wrong, but it does feel like a very Hollywood movie and not the sort of film you'd get in an American indie movie or you know, in a UK film. It doesn't feel... The film feels very American, that's what I'm trying to say. It feels very American, and it feels like you wouldn't get this story in a film from the UK or in an American indie film, because it's just... There's something about it where, in a good way, it reminds you of those films like Moneyball, like The Social Network, like Texas, which I've already mentioned, and like A Few Good Men, where they have these big, extravagant speeches, and, you know, everything is a bit over the top in certain moments. And those films I really like. So when I was reminded of those films, when I was reminded of the films I just mentioned in this film, when I was reminded of those movies, I liked that, but also it made me realise that this is a very American film, and I can understand why a lot of American film reviewers that I watch online would really enjoy this film. I can understand that, you know, I can definitely understand that after watching it, and also it just feels very Hollywoodized, and again, I don't know if that's a word, but you understand what I mean, and I think that's particularly exemplified as well by the cast. You know, you got Matt Damon, you have Ben Affleck directing, Ben Affleck's in the film as well, and one thing I haven't mentioned, Ben Affleck is great in the film as well, but, you know, it feels very American and very Hollywoodized in parts, and that's particularly, you know, showcased in the speech that Matt Damon's character does towards the end of the film. Also, I didn't find the screenplay hugely engaging. I liked the screenplay, but to be honest, the most engaging part of the film was its direction, was the film's performances. But the screenplay for me felt at times a bit dry, and it didn't have me quite as engaged as I wanted to in the writing. You know, I wasn't that engaged in the story, I was more engaged in the way it was being told. And also, this is just a nitpick, but it did annoy me when I was watching the film, so I'm going to mention it. There's a lot of moments where characters in this film call Matt Damon's character fat. And he does wear a bit of a fat suit in the film. It's only a little bit of a fat suit. But at the same time, though, Matt Damon is not fat. The day Matt Damon is fat is the day... I mean, God knows what happens to me. God knows what happens the day that Matt Damon is classified as fat. God knows what happens to me, because I'm far bigger than Matt Damon is. And it just really annoyed me that. You know, it's only a nitpick, but I don't like when characters' weights keep getting pointed out in movies. It really annoys me, because it's not key to the plot. At least, not what I understood from it anyway. And yeah, it's only a nitpick, but they mention that Matt Damon's character, is fat at least 3 times in the film, and each time I turned to the person I was watching the film with and I went, really? Like, I don't understand why they had to do that. But, saying that though, even the problems I have, whether it's the screenplay, which I didn't find as engaged as I wanted to, the fact that people call Matt Damon fat, which he's not, and also the fact that the film did feel very American. It felt like, oh, well, it's great to live in America, and also it did feel Hollywoodized in part. I did still enjoy the film, nonetheless. I did still enjoy it. I said nonetheless 3 times in this review today. I don't know why that word's on my mind. But anyway, yes, I did still enjoy the film. I thought the performance was great. Ben Affleck's direction is great. I mean, it's Ben Affleck, what do you expect? That's a guy who directed Argo, and Argo is a great film. Bloody hell, don't know what's going on outside. So have you heard a bike and some cattle rattling, whatever, out there? But anyway, yes, so there's some noise interference just then. But yeah, Ben Affleck's direction is great. The music and the needle drops is great as well. And like I said before, I enjoyed it because it's a story which I didn't care about, and it's a story which I didn't really know about, and yet I found it quite insightful, and I found it quite interesting, and I also found it at times a bit inspiring. I mean, that's also its fault, but, you know, I did find it inspiring to a certain degree. I was one of the people who by the end of the movie fell for Matt Damon's speech. Even though it did feel Hollywoodized, it still kind of works me. I don't know why that is. But yeah, I liked the film, and I thought it was solidly entertaining and inspiring and insightful. And yeah, I definitely recommend it, and it's currently streaming on Prime Video, so yeah, check it out if you have the time to. And so for that reason, and for all those reasons, sorry, I'm going to say that it's a, you know what, I'm feeling generous. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Like I said before, worth a watch. It's on Prime Video right now. Yeah, because it's a Prime Video production, so yeah, worth a watch. And even if you're not a basketball fan, because I'm not a basketball fan, and I enjoyed the film. Phenomenal performances and great direction. Won't be one of my films of the year come the end of the year, but yeah, a good watch. And it's not a film about a shoe as well, which I just want to emphasize one last time. It's not a film about the shoe. It's a film about who wears the shoe and what they represent. And the film makes a point of that, and I just want to make another point of it as well, because I don't feel some people quite understood that. But yeah, really great film, solid, entertaining, insightful, inspiring, and you know what, pretty interesting as well. And so all in all, like I've already said, I'm going to say that's air. I'm going to say that it's an 8 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast today. Let's see how long I lasted for. 16 minutes. That's pretty good for me, actually, because usually I ramble on for about 20 to 30 minutes. But anyway, guys, thank you as always for watching. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And also let me know your thoughts on air in the feedback section or in the comment section of this podcast below, whether you're watching or listening to the podcast. And also look forward to many more podcasts coming, I can't even say the word, many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.